Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to the best day of the week. It is Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, the show done every week where all we do is talk Star Wars. We take the topics and questions that you guys send in to me, and that's all we do. And that's the exact same thing as the John Campea show, except all we do is talk Star Wars. Now, how do you get one of your Star Wars topics or questions on Star Wars Talk Tuesday? It's easy. Just email us anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Once again, that's john@thejohncampeashow.com. And make sure, this is vital, put SWTT, that's Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, put SWTT in the subject line. If you don't put that in the subject line, I won't know it's a question for Star Wars Talk Tuesday. Other important thing here to keep in mind too. Keep your email message to 90 words or less. If it's any longer than that, I can't read it, and it's physically too big to even put on the screen, even if I wanted to read it. So keep it to 90 words or less. And listen, guys, we did it last week. We're going to do it again this week. I'm very pleased this week, again, to be joined by my buddy, Rodney Brazeau. Rodney, how you doing?
Great, John. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. It's good to have you back talking Star Wars again. So listen,
Always.
Guys, without any further ado, we're going to dive right into it. We're going to go into the first question. And the first question today, which once again comes to us from you guys. You guys send these in to us. And the first question today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, James Munson, who writes, "Hey, John, absolutely love the show. Thank you so much. I was thinking about life after episode 9. Do you think they have to wrap up the conflict? Couldn't they end things with a less than complete victory over the First Order so they could have countless books, shows, and standalone movies, not only in the past and future, but in the present as well?" All right, Rodney, what do you think? Do you think when episode 9 comes to a conclusion, do you think it's a good wrap up of the trilogy like the first trilogy? Or do you think they leave it a little bit more open-ended for the sake of like books and novels and things like that? How do you think they're going to handle that?
I think it's going to end the exact same way that Jedi ended, is that it ends with an ending. There's going to be a conclusion to a storyline. There's going to be a conclusion to story arc. Everything is going to conclude, and then it's going to keep going. The Return of the Jedi ended with people en masse tearing down statues of Palpatine, just everybody cheering, Ewoks dancing. Everybody was like, they blew up the Death Star. It was over. It's done. But one of the great things, and if you have the chance, I really recommend it, is the Aftermath series of novels that have come out, which are part of new canon. They really show what happens next. Did the Empire all just suddenly go, we give up and just stop? No, they didn't. Of course, the remnants of the Empire, and I'm using a word from the expanded galaxy, the remaining forces of the Empire are still business as usual. So no matter how this ends, unless they, pull a Kingsman and make every single Imperial's head explode, they can't just say it's over because it's over. Obviously, there's going to be more story. There's countless galaxies and countless stories out there, and that's the great thing about Star Wars, is that we get to see what happens next and with who.
To piggyback on top of that, the other thing you got to keep in mind is that there's a reason why all the new novels now and all the new stories now all take place in the past as far as it relates to The Force Awakens. Everything happens before The Force Awakens. And I think the reason they're doing that is that the Star Wars Story Group and the group over at Lucasfilm headed by Pablo Hidalgo, they want to make sure that they don't do anything that influences or gets in the way or trips up what future filmmakers want to do moving forward. Because remember now, everything is Star Wars canon now. And what they want to do, they want to keep the future a completely clean slate. They don't want new filmmakers coming in to be beholden. It's like, oh, well, wait. We already wrote a novel about what happens 2 years after episode 9. So now the filmmakers have to make sure their new movie stays in line with whatever happened in that book. Like, they want to make sure that they stay out of situations like that. So look, even if they do, like, I agree with Rodney, like if they wrap up episode 9, much like Return of the Jedi wraps up, where the First Order's defeated, Snoke is now gone, all this kind of stuff, and the universe celebrates, that's great. But Disney is not done with the episodic Star Wars films. They're still going to make episode 10, whether that's in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, they're still going to do that. And I just don't think they're going to want to step on the toes of their creators. Like Rodney, like even back in the Return of the Jedi days, like before the prequels came out, like we had the Grand Admiral Thrawn, we had the Heir to the Empire trilogy, but that didn't happen for a long time after Return of the Jedi. Like, right? Like, can you think of any other stuff that came out really close to Return of the Jedi that even then went into the future in the expanded universe stuff?
The only thing that came out around that time, or a little shortly while after, was like the Ewok movies. Like the TV specials.
Right.
And of course, those were very, very careful to have absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the Star Wars universe.
Yep. All right. Okay. So let's now move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Greg Rodriguez. And Greg Rodriguez writes, my question is regarding the fight between Mace, I guess that's Mace Windu, and the Emperor in episode 3. I always viewed Mace as the strongest duelist / fighter on the council, even over Yoda, who is stronger in the Force. So did Mace beat Palpatine in that duel, or did Palpatine let Mace win in order to give Anakin the final push to join the Sith? All right, well, thanks a lot for the question, Greg. And here's the way I always kind of looked at this, is that, okay, think of it in terms of pure numbers, right? When Mace Windu first goes in to confront Palpatine, he does not go alone. He's there with, what was his? Is it 4 or 3 other members of the Jedi Council? I can't remember off the top of my head now. That's a good trivia question. But for argument's sake, let's say he goes in there with 3 others. So you've got 3 powerful Jedis with Mace Windu. And even with Mace Windu, Palpatine has absolutely no problem cutting through these Jedi Masters like butter. Even with Mace Windu there, he cut through all of them, no problem. So Mace Windu couldn't beat Palpatine with 3 other ruling members of the Jedi Council with him. What makes us think that, all of a sudden Mace Windu suddenly got better with all the other Jedi Masters now dead and he was able to go toe-to-toe with Palpatine? I don't think that's the case. I think what you mentioned in your email is exactly right. I think Palpatine was just playing with Mace Windu. I think the only person ever to give the Emperor a run for his money was Yoda. But I think in that particular fight between Mace and Palpatine, I think you're exactly right. I think Palpatine was playing with Mace. He knew Anakin was going to come. He was going to put Anakin in that impossible situation. Because you remember, Mace had him down. He's like, oh, I'm so weak. I'm so weak. And the moment Anakin reveals his colors that, yep, I'm on the Emperor's side, boom, he pops right back up and I'm perfectly fine. Everything's good now. So the way I interpreted it personally was that Palpatine was toying with them. Rodney, how do you view that fight?
Well, first off, he had 2 sidekicks, if I recall correctly, and that was Kit Fisto and Adamundi. So I believe that we're looking at a warrior cast and a guardian class.
I think there was at least 4 of them in the room, wasn't there?
There may have been, but the initial, I'm just picturing the scene in my head, and I remember the initial scene when he comes in and he's like flanked by Kit and Adamundi.
Yeah, I know those 2 were definitely with him, but I thought there was another one.
Yeah,
anyway,
there may have been some foot behind him, but the 3 of them, at least, that's a force to be reckoned with right there. Like, forget what you think as Mace is the greatest duelist or the greatest lightsaber fighter. But bottom line is you've got, so much more coming from the other side. Like, he was powerful enough to fight them off. You were right. He put him on. I think there are aspects of that fight that he didn't anticipate. Because I'm pretty sure he didn't say, let's see if I can get deformed and that'll push Anakin over. I don't think he was quite at that level, but when they walked in, he didn't go, oh shit. They walked in, he was just like...
Hold on a second, I found it here. I'm going to bring up an image right now. I did find an image. There's an image right there. It is 4 of them. So it's Mace Windu with 3 other Jedi Council. So it's 4 of them in total that went to go and take him on. Okay, sorry for interrupting you, Rod. I just wanted to bring that picture up.
Absolutely. And, but he doesn't he's sitting at the table and they walk in and they're like, we got to have some words with you. And he's just like, oh, what is it? Please elaborate. Like he's not like, this was a long time coming. He's ready.
He wasn't worried in the least.
He didn't blink. And I do think that there was a little bit of that, playing to Anakin's, feelings, of course, when he was, like, oh, stop. I'm sure it didn't tickle when he got his face all deformed and stuff. But,
oh, please don't let him kill me. And then the moment Anakin shows his hand, then boom, he's perfectly fine. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I see it too.
Yeah. But then to contrast, later on, we've got Anakin on the ground and, Palpatine throwing his, hate on Luke. And there's Vader sitting on the ground going, oh, don't kill me. So there's that parallel there where you see that fight there. And then you see the final battle with Luke and Vader in front of the Emperor. So I like that parallel.
All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Guitar Hero. And Guitar Hero writes, hey, John, big fan since the AMC days. Well, thank you very much. My question for you is, with the announcement of Disney starting their own streaming site in 2019, what do you think are the chances of a live-action Star Wars show being released on that platform? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. Well, look, I've said for a long time that I really didn't want a live-action Star Wars show. I don't want the dilution of the Star Wars universe. I love one movie a year. One movie a year is great for me. I don't want some network getting their hands on Star Wars and start playing in the Star Wars sandbox. I've never wanted that. However, if you guys have been watching me for any period of time, I've been changing my tune a little bit because ever since Disney announced they're going to launch their own streaming service, look, I'm convinced that one of the reasons that they are launching this streaming service, I think, is because they want their own Star Wars version of Game of Thrones. I think, honestly, the heads at Lucasfilm and Disney have sat back and said, this Game of Thrones thing is like the biggest thing in the world. I bet we could be that if we had a Star Wars version of that. Wouldn't have to be as high budget as the movies. We could make it a little bit more visceral, whatever. But I honestly believe that one of the motivating factors of Disney launching their own streaming channel is to, in fact, do a live-action Star Wars show. And as long as there's no other networks involved and it's all under the same roof, it's Lucasfilm and it's Disney that have 100% control of everything, I become a little bit more open-minded to the idea. I'm still a little bit apprehensive. I admit I'm still a little bit apprehensive about the whole idea. But I've got a picture right here of a bounty hunter. I believe it's Boba Fett, because there was going to be, they did work on a live action Star Wars show for a while. It was like something about the underground or something. I can't remember, the underworld or something like that. I think that's what it was going to be called. But yes, I do believe that one of Disney's strategies is to do a live action Star Wars show. Rodney, to you, do you think that's what they're looking at doing? And if so, would you be in favor of it or would you be apprehensive about it? What do you think?
I think it was best summed up. There was a Penny Arcade clip, a Penny Arcade strip that had this week on the CW was, the Star Wars show. And they had kind of that worry that you're saying is that, this week on the CW and the Cantina band was like, Alexis on Fire or something, like, it was like the artist of the week, just because it's just that commercialization of all their shows, and they wouldn't be driving snow speeders or anything like that. They'd have a BMW. There is that network interference that is definitely a concern. Some of our favorite TV shows that are, falling into cult classic status, were ruined because they simply got they didn't get the ratings they wanted, right. And, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. recently got a reprieve because the big dogs just said, we don't care. It's going on. Like that kind of thing is where it's turning around, where they're having more control over their own product and whether or not it gets aired. And if you've got your own TV station, you can put whatever you want on it. And you're not limited by the amount of airtime in a week, or
right.
that we can only show 3 shows on Friday night. We got, we have unlimited amount of airtime because you can watch whatever you want to watch. I'm looking forward to the new service because I project that Disney will open the vaults and everything will be on it, from their classic films, the animation, the, their other, sub imprints. And of course, because they own everything, they're probably saying, don't cancel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because when they do, we'll just move it onto our platform. You know, like, because they own Marvel, they own Disney, they own Star Wars. Like, they own everything now.
Well, they own ABC too. Let's not forget they own that network too.
But then they can say, we're going to free up that airtime because now you're worried about, you know, commercial space and all that kind of stuff. They're now, once they've got their platform established, they can say, sure, ABC can get rid of that off of their platform because now we'll just simply put it on ours. You know, they can move it to a new medium. And I predicted, like 10, 15 years ago, back in our movie blog days, I did an article about that there will be program your own TV, will be a thing in the future. And here we are in the future. And, you know, we've got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, and everybody's got their own services now for stuff. And they're all creating their new content. To address your issue of like the Game of Thrones-like series, I would love something more gritty, real, and in-depth with like an ongoing series. Something you can't do in a movie with that, like, you know, 6-episode character arc where we know we can develop characters. So you can't really do that in a movie as much. And I really look forward to seeing something like that in Star Wars.
All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from, Emilio Villalobos, who writes, "Hi, John. Love the show. Thank you so much, Emilio. Been a longtime fan. Thanks for your amazing content. In episode 4, why do you believe Obi-Wan let Vader strike him down? The fight seemed pretty close until that point, almost as if they were both sizing each other out. Also, who do you think would have won if the fight had continued?" Thanks a lot for the question, man. I had this discussion with a friend of mine not so terribly long ago, and I'll let you know my position on it. My position is Obi-Wan could not win that fight. It was a different time now. Obi-Wan might have been able to hold his own with Vader for a bit, but I think as soon as Obi-Wan in that control room said, "I'm going to go shut down the tractor beams. This is something I have to do alone," I think he left knowing he was probably going to bump into Vader. And bumping into Vader, he knew was a fight he couldn't win anymore. That's not a fight he could win. So what happened? They start to fight. Now, clearly, Obi-Wan lifts his saber and he lets Vader strike him down to end the fight. He voluntarily lets the fight end. I believe the reason he did that was because he saw Luke and the rest running for the Millennium Falcon, and he knew as long as this fight's going on, there's no way that kid is going to leave. That kid is not going to leave as long as I'm still alive. He'll refuse to leave, and that kid's gotta leave. And as long as I'm still alive here fighting, as long as this fight's going on, Luke is going to try to fight his way to me. He's going to try to get me out of this. There is no getting out of this. I ain't going to beat Vader. So he smiles that grin because he knows, okay, Vader, now you're screwed because now Luke is on his path. He smiles, grins, lifts up his saber, and lets Vader strike him down. So to answer the first part of your question, yes, I do think he let him win, and I think he knew he wasn't going to win. To answer the second part of your question, who do I think would have won had the fight continued? As I said, I don't think that was a fight that Obi-Wan could win at this point in his life and at this point in Vader's life. So that's how I saw it play out at any rate. Rodney, how did you see it play out? How do you think that went all about?
I'd like to give you a whole lot of conversation to fight you on this one, but I can't disagree. I think that he honestly straight up, he knew he wasn't going to win that fight. When he said, "I got to go turn off this stuff," he knew he was not coming back.
Right.
He straight up knew he was not coming back. Plus we got stuff from episode 3 where he says, we're going to learn about some new techniques where you can, enter the Force and commune with, the past. Obi-Wan knew that he'd still be able to guide Luke. He knew that was happening.
I hadn't thought about
practicing. That. He was practicing for that. He was practicing to outlive his physical form. So, he knew that, he wasn't saying like, "Oh, I got to do this so he'll leave. It's too bad he won't have a teacher." Right. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this, and and plus we'll send him off to see Yoda." But he had a plan.
Absolutely,
So
completely agree.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next question. And the next question today, this one comes to us from David Kreminster, who writes, "My wife and I started another Star Wars marathon. Good for you. That's a good marriage right there. We just watched Empire, and I just can't understand why everybody is mad at Han Solo for wanting to go and pay Jabba. We all know that in Empire, the rebels are not in a good place, but while the rebels has only the Empire on the lookout, Han also has Jabba. Thanks, and bring on the filthy. All right, Rodney, why do you think people are so mad at Han Solo? Like that, the whole kerfuffle in Empire Strikes Back when he says, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I gotta go pay off Jabba the Hutt. Do you see where he's coming from? Or do you think everybody's like, why would Han do that? Like, how do you see that whole thing?
Yeah, like just imagine, your day job and, a job that you have been doing and liking and loving for a while. And this is the way you've been raising a living and you've got stuff going on. And then for like a week, you're hanging out with these other guys and they're like, hey, come and do this with us. And he's like, yeah, that's cool. But I got some stuff going on. He doesn't say goodbye forever. He's just like, I got to take care of my stuff. And I don't think it's unreasonable for him to take care of that in the bigger picture. Again, if you have a chance, read the Aftermath. One of the characters in Aftermath that I really like is a Y-Wing pilot that fought during the Battle of Endor. Right, yeah. And she goes back to her hometown, or like her home planet, to reunite with her son. And she's been gone for like 7-8 years. So like this kid's a teenager now, and his mom, all he knows about his mom is that she left him. She straight up left him for this greater cause. Han Solo is kind of on the other side of that coin, is that he sees the greater cause. His heart is definitely pulled toward it because he comes back. But I mean, he has to take care of his own business. Even if he says, I'm going to join you later, wasn't part of the dialogue. But if he says, like, you know what, I'll be right back. I got stuff to take care of. Okay, there is the one part about this whole thing that has always bothered me, to be honest with you, is that, okay, first of all, completely agree. I wasn't planning on joining the rebellion. You guys just kind of fell into my lap and I helped you blow up the Death Star. And yeah, I'm with you now, but I still got stuff I got to deal with. This whole notion, this is the one thing that's never sat right with me about that scene. So you got to go pay off Jabba the Hutt. So I'll see you after lunch. I mean, he's got the money. We saw he has the money at the end of episode 4. He's stacking all the money on the Millennium Falcon. He's got what he needs to pay back Jabba. Hey, look, he should have just looked at his watch. Look, I'll tell you what, look, I'll be back by dinner. I just need to run out for a minute. Why this scene was this big, huge, drawn out, long farewell? You're abandoning the rebellion. I've never understood that. He's just stepping out for a pinch. I don't know, maybe by hyperspace, it'll take him 4 days to get to Tatooine, whatever, but I'll be back in a minute. Like, just give me a minute and I'll be right back. And I never understood why the movie played it out as if, well, Han's got to go pay off Jabba, so that means Han's gone. It's like, I've never understood. That's my one little gripe with The Empire Strikes Back, is that they played it out that way. I think it's part of his character development, and this is part of and I'm not going to get into this might be for a later episode. Han shot first. Right. Keep in mind that Han shot first philosophy is that Han was not 100% a good person. He had a heart of gold, but he lived and functioned in a criminal empire, in a criminal side of the world. He was in the dark side of things going on. He was a smuggler. He was a thief. He was a con artist. He was on the wrong side of the tracks. He was on the wrong side of the tracks. And while he did have a noble thing in the end, he was a scoundrel. So if he's a scoundrel, are we really surprised that he wanted to take care of his own crap and he wasn't 100% sold on this whole rebellion thing? He's like, good luck with that, kid. I'm out of here. And then later, he comes back around. All right, let's move on now to the final question of the day. And the final question today comes to us from, I don't know how to pronounce this, Schwinzels, who writes, hi, my question is, assuming she is still alive, that she is still alive and survived her battle with Vader, what do you think? I brought it down for a second. What do you think the chances are we could see Ahsoka Tano pop up in the new Obi-Wan movie? Okay, well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And look, I'm going to tell you straight up right now, I do not like Ahsoka Tano. Don't like the character.
Never have. Hated her from the very first moment she popped up in Star Wars The Clone Wars, that pathetically awful animated movie. Never liked her throughout the series. I know she went through some character development, but it was never enough to get me back on board. Now, I know I make a lot of my Star Wars loving friends cringe when I say that, because a lot of my friends do like Ahsoka Tano. And I know a lot of you guys like Ahsoka Tano. And that's great. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. That's wonderful that you like her. I'm glad that you do. Now, so I do not like Ahsoka Tano. Then in Rebels, she pops up in Rebels. And instantly I'm like, ugh, why is she here? But the way they treated her character, if you watched any of my Rebels after show stuff, I started to get on board with the way they used her and the way she carried herself in Rebels, to the point that I was really looking forward to her final confrontation with Vader. Not because, oh, finally Ahsoka Tano dies. No, but because I thought, you know what? The way they're using her character here, this character now deserves a big heroic death. She deserves a big heroic send-off. And just like everybody else, I found myself starting to look forward to her final and eventual confrontation with Vader. And then they totally screwed the pooch. They copped out. That was such a cop-out ending where, oh, both of them walk away. And you see Ahsoka Tano walking off and Vader's fine. He's just had his masks busted, whatever. Total cop-out. As a big fan of Rebels, I was very unsatisfied. Like, you were building up to this fight, building up. And you're really, seriously, you're calling it a draw? Really? And I think that goes back to the fact that Ahsoka Tano is, for whatever reason, is one of Dave Filoni's pet projects. Dave Filoni loves Ahsoka Tano. Because he loves Ahsoka Tano, that character can't die. And I think that's BS. I think that's total BS. They should have had her have this big heroic death, saving everybody else, and that be the end of it. Instead, this big fight that they were pretty much building up to the entire season of Rebels ends in a draw, where they both walk out. Cop out. I don't care if you love Ahsoka Tano or hate Ahsoka Tano, you got to acknowledge that's a bit of a cop-out. But okay, that's not what you're asking about. You're asking about, since she does survive that confrontation with Vader, what's the possibility we see her pop up in an Obi-Wan movie? Well, let's put it this way. They have not officially said who they're getting on to direct. Now, there is that Academy Award nominated director that everybody was talking about, that he's in talks to direct it. That's great. But there's also been some whispers that they might give the Obi-Wan movie to Dave Filoni, the creator, executive producer, and showrunner of Clone Wars and of Star Wars Rebels, to give him an Obi-Wan movie as his first live-action feature film. If, and this is a big if Dave Filoni ends up directing the Obi-Wan movie, I would put the over-under at 95% Ahsoka Tano will be in it. 95%, maybe even 96. Just the slightest possibility that she won't. Why? Because for whatever reason, Dave Filoni's got a real hard-on for the Ahsoka Tano character. And if he's directing that movie, I almost guarantee you he will put Ahsoka Tano in it. Which, I mean, if he's directing it, all the power to him. More power to him if he wants to do that, that's great. Let's say it's not Dave Filoni. I'll go to the other end of the spectrum. I do believe it's possible, but I'm going to go like 15% chance that Ahsoka Tano pops up in an Obi-Wan movie that is not directed by Dave Filoni. So I really think it all comes down to that. I think it comes down to if Dave Filoni ends up directing an Obi-Wan movie or not. So Rodney, let's go over to you on this. Chances, what do you think the chances are, and what would be the rationale on the possibilities of getting an Ahsoka Tano character in an Obi-Wan standalone movie?
I think that there's a little higher percentage chance that we'll see other Jedi. So that Obi-Wan, while in this time frame where the movie is going to take place in, it's Obi-Wan hiding on Tatooine, and there's got to be some other story going on. And I think that there's a really high chance of seeing other Jedi. I don't know if it's going to be her. I don't know who it's going to be, but I kind of hope it's not. Not because I dislike the character. I'm on the other side of that, is that I like what the character became. I was with John at the beginning when we were watching Clone Wars, and he was like, oh my God, I can't believe this character. Why did they bring her in there? She's the Jar Jar of the series. She was annoying. She didn't have any value other than, occasional comic relief. She was an irritating character. Now, I love Rebels, and her character has actually evolved a lot more in Rebels. Obviously, they've gone with a larger story arc with her, and I do like where she's come, and she's actually got value now. So when an annoying character comes back around to have value, I see value in that. Now, whether or not they'll bring her around, I think that it was just more that because Rebels is aimed at kids, that they weren't necessarily going to show a main character get slaughtered. They were going to candy coat that with her limping off with her wounds and him limping off with his, and we know where he ends up.
I don't know, man. We're coming to the end of the series, and a number of them cannot survive the end of the series, right?
Well, and they're going to have to explain. That's another question, is that the end of the series, where are they? Where are they after? What happens to these characters? So if they don't die at the end of the series, where have they been for the last 30 years? So yeah, there's definitely another aspect to that, is that, you're abandoning these characters or we're killing them off. So if everybody survives, then there's always the chance that they'll show up in a future project.
Well, we know that Captain Syndulla, we know she survives because we hear her name mentioned in the Rebel base intercom in Rogue One. We see her ship in Rogue One. We know that Chopper survives because we see Chopper rolling by in Rogue One. But those are the only two that we know that live. I mean, everybody else could be smoked by this point, right?
Yes. And being Jedi, the Jedi characters for certain, it takes away from the impact that there was more Jedi still around by the time episode 4 runs around. So I think the Obi-Wan movie is going to touch on survivors. The people that are all scattered, like all the Jedi that were on mission that, survived Order 66, and they're scattered. So to have that be her, I don't know would be a bad thing. I'd have to see how they handle it. I think it would be really cool to see a live action version of her. That would be kind of an interesting picture to see, to see how they depict her or what she's become after. I know an older, more mature version of her. I don't know that I can lay odds on for or against. My big thing is that I just think Obi-Wan's not going to be the only Jedi in that film. I think it's going to revolve around that.
When they say the Obi-Wan movie happens, like if the Obi-Wan movie happens, say 5 years post Revenge of the Sith, then that totally makes sense. That there will still be smatterings of Jedi still in hiding and running by that point. If though, let's say it takes place 5 years before episode 4. At that point, it's a little bit harder to believe there's any more Jedi still around.
Yeah. And that's really going to, we say it's going to take place in between, but you're right. It could be, there's a large sliding scale there. There's about 18 years between.
Yeah, in between's a long period of time.
There's an 18-year gap where in that gap, we know that, Vader was going around and hunting the Jedi. And bounty hunters were not just Vader. It was that there was open season on Jedi. Is that bounty hunters were enlisted to say, what, if you come in with a lightsaber, that's worth cash. There was an open season on Jedi. So yeah, there's not going to be a lot of them. And if there is, that ruins things. The value of Luke being the last Jedi means that he has to be the last Jedi. And then the twist is, there's 2, but there can't be there's 2. And I got a little black book of guys that were hiding as well.
Yoda made it clear when Yoda's laying on his bed, he says to Luke, "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be." I mean, that's it. Yeah. There's no room for interpretation. There's no certain point of view. Yeah. When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be. And so there aren't any others running around the beginning of episode 4.
Yeah, from a certain point of view.
and I don't think Obi-Wan's getting away with that BS this time around. All right. Okay, guys, that will do it for us for this installment of Star Wars Talk Tuesdays. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, going to bring this up here on the screen to remind you, if you guys have a topic or a question for a future episode of Star Wars Talk Tuesday, once again, just email me, john@thejohncampeashow.com, and put in the subject line SWTT. That way I know you're sending in a question for Star Wars Talk Tuesdays. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Rodney Brazeau. Rodney, where can people find you online? How can they follow you on social media?
GloriousPorpoise.com and at my Twitter at Bandersnitch. And Bandersnitch, Bandersnitch at Twitter.
And you guys can simply follow me on Facebook and on Twitter, simply at John Campea. You can see that right there. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.